If you've been following current events lately, I don't need to tell you, it's not looking good for the human race. We're looking at catastrophic weather events, rising sea levels. We're on track to lose huge chunks of coastline to global warming. Meanwhile, horrifying plagues are surfacing all around the world. And the ease of international travel means that those diseases no longer stay concentrated in isolated pockets, but explode into full-on global pandemics. We're increasingly dependent on the machines that make our lives easier, which leaves us vulnerable to viruses of a different sort. And the fact that we are so dependent on them makes it not so hard to imagine the machines eventually becoming sentient and enslaving us all. So, if we're going to make it as a species, we're going to need people who are brave, who are bold, and who know how to solve problems. People who aren't afraid to roll up their sleeves, try new things, maybe get a little bit messy, but ultimately save the day. We need designers. Designers are problem solvers. Their work is to make our lives easier by coming up with new and innovative solutions to the challenges that life hurls at us every day. Now, when a lot of us think about designers, we might imagine those stylish souls who make our iPhones look sexy. Anyone have the new iPhone? It's super sexy. But good designers, while they may well be interested in how things look, are way more invested in how things work. This is a local guy, Alan Shanasi. He's designed an automated system that allows people to create custom-made blast shields so that when radiologists are treating brain tumors, they can customize the way that the laser penetrates in order to spare as much gray matter as possible. Architectural designers are creating ways to make our buildings more efficient, more sustainable, trying to decrease our dependence on fossil fuels. This little blob is called the UHO. It was designed by a team of industrial designers in London, and they used a process called spherification to create a really thin membrane, kind of like an egg yolk, that could contain water until it was ready to consume. It's strong, it's hygienic, it's biodegradable, it's edible. I don't know how tasty. But it promises to cut way back on the 50 billion water bottles that are tossed into landfills around the world each year. Now, if we can train our young people to think and learn like these designers, they'll be ready to face any problem that gets thrown in their path, ready to innovate. But in order to do that, we're going to need to radically rethink the way that education happens. And the single best way to promote innovation is through design thinking. So what is design thinking? Well, it's the process that designers use to come up with revolutionary new ideas. They start by exploring a problem, investigating it, interviewing people who are close to it so they can really understand what they're grappling with. Then they move on to brainstorming, imagining a whole slew of possible solutions, no matter how crazy or far-fetched they may seem. They choose one or two of the most promising ideas, and they work with other people to prototype them, test them, and evolve them. They share their ideas, get feedback, and then refine their ideas to make their ideas even stronger. And when they've finally arrived at a solution that works, they build it. They make it happen. Now, if you talk to designers who are practicing out in the real world, they'll tell you it's rarely such a clean and linear process. There's usually a lot more looping back and skipping steps and starting over from scratch. But in essence, this is the process that most designers use to come up with innovative solutions to complex problems. I'm not a designer myself, at least not by training. In my early career, I was a curator for contemporary art at museums like the SF MoMA. I've also been a printmaker and a gallery director and a teaching artist. Back in 2009, I had just finished my degree in art and design education here at RISD, and my husband, Manuel Cordero, came home one night from a community forum where people were talking about places in the city that they felt included and excluded. It happened that there were a group of teenagers as part of that meeting that night, and when they were asked where they felt excluded, maybe not surprisingly, they said, school. Which is weird, because if you think about it, schools are made for kids, and yet they're not often places where they feel that sense of empowerment and comfort. So they probed a little deeper, they asked some more questions, and the kids said, well, one of the worst things about school is getting there, especially if it's raining or snowing out. They said that there weren't any bus shelters along the path that they took to school, and so if the weather was bad, they usually just skipped. Manuel told me that, and my first reaction was to laugh out loud. I was like, what are you kids, made of sugar? Get a raincoat, buy an umbrella, you gotta go to school. But we probed a little deeper, and it turns out this is actually a real problem. There's strong research pointing to a correlation between inclement weather and increased absences. So we decided we wanted to do something about it. And we thought really hard about the best way to make an intervention. Do we call up RIPTA and demand that they build more bus shelters? Do we petition our city council people to fund this? We even considered going out in the middle of the night with our drills and our lumber and just throwing up a bunch of bus shelters guerrilla style. But in the end, we decided that the most effective thing that we could do would be to get those young people involved in designing and building their own bus shelters, to empower them to solve their own problem. And from that seed, DownCity Design was born. Our mission from the beginning has been to help people, and especially young people, build solutions for their communities, things that would make their neighborhoods better places to live and work and learn. In the past 6 years, we've worked with over 700 kids, and we've helped them to design and build 32 built projects in parks, playgrounds, schools, and nonprofits here in Providence and beyond. They've built some really cool stuff, including an eco lab. It's this really beautiful kind of soaring structure. It's an outdoor classroom for urban agriculture. And it was designed and built by high schoolers. In fact, high schoolers from the Met School, Dennis's school, right here in Providence. This was their long-term internship, and over the course of the year, they went through this whole process, brainstorming, prototyping, all the way to jackhammering up asphalt and pouring concrete footings and erecting these strong support beams. It's a gorgeous structure. I wish you could see it. And while they made these things, they learned. They learned a ton. They learned math, because you've got to be able to multiply and divide fractions if you're going to make a cut list or build a scale model. They learned physics, because if you're going to create a structure that's stably sound, you have to understand how to create something that's beautifully engineered. They learned environmental science, because if you're going to build a greenhouse, for example, you first need to understand the life cycle of a plant and the way that the sun moves through the sky and how to orient your building to maximize solar gain. But maybe most importantly, they learned how to learn. They learned to ask questions and where to look for answers. They learned to draw connections between ideas. They learned how to work together, pooling their strengths and resources to get the job done. If you ask me, those are the most important skills we can possibly be helping kids master right now. So back to the decline of the human race. If you've been reading your post-apocalyptic young adult fiction, you know it's coming, right? But in the meantime, we live in these extraordinary decadent end times. I carry a computer in my pocket that can answer virtually any question I can possibly come up with in seconds. It's amazing. It's a great time for curious types, right? Very satisfying. But also overwhelming, and especially if you're in the business of educating young people. We have so many smart, well-intentioned people just wringing their hands going, it's just too much. There's too much to learn, and too many reasons for kids not to learn it. Too many reasons for them not to care. And to increase the pressure, there's so much emphasis on measurement and accountability, right? We want clear evidence that our kids are learning. And I get it. I want to know that our kids are learning. The problem is that we're designing our learning in response to the tests rather than the other way around. Why not start with what we really need kids to learn, what they're really going to need to make it out there in this catastrophic, plague-ridden, machine-driven world? Design your learning program around that, and then design assessments that can help you measure that learning. So what are those essential skills? What are the things that we need kids to master before we send them out there to solve all the problems we've put in their path? Well, communication is key. It doesn't matter if you've got a great idea if you can't get anyone else to listen to it, if you can't persuade anyone else of its value. In our design build programs, we actually ask our kids to present their ideas to their clients, not just once, but multiple times as their designs evolve. They have to be really persuasive. They've got to have images to back up their words. They have to create scale models and renderings to show what their ideas will look like in action. They hate it, most of them, but they practice a lot, and that helps. They're going to need to play well with others. That's crucial. Almost all of us are asked to work as a team for most of our working lives, and yet we're given so few opportunities to practice that in school. How many of you guys learned in a classroom that looked a lot like this one? Yeah, we all did, because classrooms have looked like this for over 100 years. Got your rows of desks facing a board with the teacher positioned at the front like a font of knowledge. The very design of our classrooms tells kids that they have to succeed or fail based on their own merits, that they can't look to anyone else for help. That's not really the way our world works anymore. We specialize, we go deep. We get to understand one area really, really well, and then when we encounter problems in an area that we don't know as much about, we find someone who does. We ask for help. The kids in our after-school program this past spring were invited to design and build an outdoor classroom for Rhode Island College's nascent apiary program, beekeeping. They didn't know anything about bees when they started, so we invited them to the hives. And one of the beekeepers sat down with them and said, okay, we've got 4 basic needs. We need signage, storage, seating, and shade. 4 S's, we call them. And so we divided the kids up into 4 different groups, and they were each going to tackle one of those different program areas. They started coming up with ideas. And then we had this magical afternoon where they shared their ideas with one another, and they started to see all kinds of cool ways that their ideas could connect. And they ended up designing this incredibly elegant structure that combines all of those needs in a really brilliant way. So the stools that you see also have bee facts embedded in the front, and they slot into this hive-like structure so that they function as signage. And then the whole back of the structure opens up to create storage for the beekeeping suits and the frames. And then the structure itself is angled to provide shade from the midday sun. Brilliant! And none of those kids could have come up with that idea working on their own. It was all about the team. This may be the most important one at all. They have to learn to fail. As designers, we understand that the best thing you can do to get to success in the end is to fail, but to fail forward, to try something and let it fail and then make it better based on what you've learned. But our schools fear failure, and our kids get very few opportunities to practice it. Last summer, we ran a summer camp at the Providence Career and Technical Academy, and in the first week of the program, the principal came down and told our kids, all right, I got a problem for you. We've got all these kids who are riding their boards to school now, which is great, healthy for them, good for the environment. The problem is that these skateboards are getting left all over the hallway because they don't fit in our lockers. And so they're creating trip hazards and they're getting stolen. Can you do something about this? And our kids were like, oh yeah, we can do something about that. And they made this beautiful skateboard rack. And they were about a day away from installing it when the call came from on high. No go. Didn't comply with ADA regulations. And we were like, no, we measured. The wheelchairs can still get by. There's plenty of room for access. And they said, no, the problem is actually that a visually impaired person walking down the hallway wouldn't be able to find this structure with their cane. So they wouldn't know that there's something sticking way out of the wall. So sorry, can't do it. And the kids were devastated. I mean, they had poured their heart and soul into this project over the past 6 weeks. They had made this incredible thing, and now it was just going to end up as scrap wood. And we said, whoa, hold on. You guys got this. You can solve this problem. And they did. They took a day. They came up with a really simple solution. They installed a shelf on the ground plane that people could find with their cane that would signal this protrusion coming out above. And they convinced the administrators to let them move ahead with it, and boom, problem solved. All right, so we know what aptitudes we need to foster in kids to help them succeed. How do we reshape our classrooms to make sure that those skills are prioritized? Well, the good news is we've got a wealth of information at our fingertips. We've got the tools and technologies to make truly differentiated learning possible. So now it's time to invite teachers to play a new role in students' education. It doesn't make sense anymore for everyone to be learning the same content in exactly the same way at exactly the same time. Great teachers help kids figure out what they're passionate about. They help them dig deeper and make connections. They're facilitators, guiding students along their own path towards knowledge and discovery. And the design process and leading kids through that process is a really effective way to help teachers become comfortable in that role of facilitator. Back in 2013, I was honored to be named a Rhode Island Innovation Fellow, and I launched this project, Innovation by Design, with the goal of bringing the tools of design thinking to students and teachers across the state. We're working on fostering the next generation of innovators, helping them to become problem solvers. And we recognize that in order to do that, we'll also need to support teachers to be comfortable letting their kids try things and mix it up and probably fail a fair amount. So we're creating a toolkit. It's a series of design activities, kind of like a game that teachers and students can play together to tackle a problem that's relevant to their learning in any subject. So we've talked with biology teachers who are interested in using this to help their students more deeply understand climate change. We've talked with English teachers who can imagine their students developing reader guides to classic texts. We've talked with administrators who want to build a better sense of community in the school and want to enlist teachers and students in making that effort happen. Here's one of my favorite activities. It's called the Brain Dash. And we came up with this after I heard a piece on NPR that said that you're most creative when your heart rate is elevated, when your blood's pumping, right? And so we literally make people dash across the room and scrawl a solution on a piece of paper and then dash back and hand their marker like a baton to a classmate. And you've got about 7 or 8 minutes to generate as many ideas as possible. And most of them are terrible. But there's always a few really interesting, really exciting ones. We're partnering with a firm called Design Agency to prototype and produce this game, and we're going to be debuting it this winter. Now, we recognize that teachers have a lot on their plates. They're overwhelmed, and it's hard for them sometimes to imagine incorporating new things into their classroom. So we're creating some supports for them. We're creating an online forum where they can connect with one another and share things that worked, tips and resources. We're also planning to take the show on the road. So we have hired One by One Design Collaborative to create what we're calling the Mobile Design Lab. And it's this spectacular structure. It's sort of like a giant Tinker Toy set. And it can transform from a threshold to a series of work tables to displays and easels. And the idea is that we'll be bringing these tools to schools across the state for day-long or week-long residencies, where our design facilitators will walk students through some of the kinds of exercises that we've been developing. We're really excited about this and ready to get underway. Design thinking invites students to practice a whole slew of skills that are just crucial to life in the 21st century. Collaboration, communication, imagination, persistence. We're living in a really complex era. We've got big problems that require big, bold solutions. And my work, my mission, is to help kids face these problems bravely and creatively, to help them find new ways forward and to work together to implement them, so that when the tsunamis and the zombies and the machine overlords come, we'll be ready for them. Thank you.